everybody, this is Dringo64 and welcome to something a little bit different because I won't actually be playing gaming related stuff on Thursdays and Fridays now. Instead, I'm going to be reading different stories or fan fictions, if you want to call them that, for My Little Pony and that sort of stuff. So we're going to start one called Lilies of the Field by Hap. Let's begin. Lily lifted her hoof and scowled at the wrinkled flower pressed into the mud. It was a lily. It didn't matter. There were thousands more than she could pick in an entire week. Her basket was almost full and the field was still absolutely covered. She looked up and blew the blonde locks out of her eyes. Except for a single cottage with cobwebs in the windows, it was lilies as far as she could see. None of the flowers belonged to her. Each lily was destined to be a moment of happiness in some pony's life, and Lily was in control of that destiny. No pony would see them. No pony would experience that happiness unless she brought them to the market. She scooped up the flower, lifting it to her face. It was mostly salvageable. The bright yellow stamens popped up and waved at her, bouncing at her with every heartbeat. A couple of bruises, dark and translucent, wandered across the white petals. Nothing that any pony would notice in the overlapping shadows of the lowest layer of a bouquet. With a sigh, Lily rotated her hoof, letting the flower fall back to the ground. She placed her hoof squarely on top of it and shifted her weight, then twisted her hoof back and forth to grind the flower into the dirt. No pony wants a damaged lily. There are so many flowers! The mare's eyes sparkled like dew on an endless field. The cottage was full of flowers. Every dish in Lily's house had been pressed into service as makeshift vases. Even the dinner plates were covered in carefully arranged spirals of blue columbine. Bookcases, end tables, and lamps were in bloom, with fresh greenery poking out of their nooks and crannies. Shafts of sunlight cut through the room, splashing across daisies as they twisted on threads tacked to the rune-high beams above. Crystal crocuses strewn about the floor shattered the sunlight into brilliant multicolored rays that painted every surface. Lily bit her lip. Goldfish? The other mare blinked out of her stupor and dropped her saddlebag to the floor. Even the air is full of flowers. It was true. Lily knew the evening breeze would be blowing across her fields right about now. It had picked up a hint of chill from the river as it had emerged from the shady Everfree, just enough to bring a freshness to the summer air. It smelled like sunshine, picnics, and the greenest shoots of grass. Goldfish chapped her chin with her hoof. Smells like... It reminds me of... A grin grew across her face as she hunched down and wiggled her hindquarters, then pounced on Lily, wrapping her in a crushing hug. She closed her eyes, buried her muzzle in Lily's mane, and puffed out her ribs to take a deep sniff before letting out a quiet sigh. She opened her eyes with a smile and leaned back. One of her ears twitched and jerked when a hanging daisy tickled her white fur. Lily shuffled her hooves. Were you gonna finish that sentence? Goldfish chuckled. I had a joke about the fragrance, but she waved her hoof in circles in the air. Let me guess, Lily said with a roll of her eyes. Something about lilies? Probably. Goldfish sighed and rested her forehead against Lily's neck. Thanks. Lily watched the sunlight grow orange as it crept across the floor, painted long shadows of scattered loose petals. Goldfish? Yeah? Lily pushed Goldfish to a comfortable conversational distance. Just, as a matter of practicality, I thought you might want to room with me. Goldfish raised an eyebrow. Practicality? Well, you're trying to get your aquarium business started, and I know that apartment can't be cheap, even as tiny as it is. Plus, my house is closer to your shop, anyway. Goldfish tapped Lily on the nose with a hoof. That does seem awfully practical. So, what do you think? My couch! Goldfish screamed as she jumped onto the couch, bouncing flowers into the air. She came to rest on her back, all four hooves pointing straight up while petals rained down around her. She rolled over and sat up with a gasp. I can move in tonight! Lily trotted over to the couch and sat down just as Goldfish jumped up and galloped the 3 steps to her saddlebag. Tonight? I thought we'd go to the big summer sun celebration and then I could help you move tomorrow. Goldfish was suddenly at the couch, pressing a hoof against Lily's muzzle. Shh, shh, shh. But I think... Shh, shh, shh. Goldfish shook her head gently, her ocean blue curls bouncing against her rosy cheeks. It's shh. Lily knew better than to argue. As the sun's last illumination faded, Goldfish became the brightest thing in the entire cottage. At last her hoof slipped from Lily's muzzle, and she leaned in close, whispering, "Watch this." In a sudden explosion of energy, Goldfish leapt away from the couch, did a ninja roll across the floor to her saddlebags, and dumped their contents into a pile on the floor. She froze with the empty saddlebag dangling from her hooves and pretending to breathe heavily from the exertion. Several of the dangling flowers had been in her trajectory, and now spun wildly as they swung back and forth on their strings, tracing arcs through the air like huge smiles. "See? I'm already halfway moved in." I Lily pinched her lips together and took a long breath through her nose. "I'm sure you have more stuff than that." Goldfish tossed the bags over her back and began digging through the pile. "Come on, Lily. You've seen my apartment. There's not much there." "Ah, here it is." She pulled a wad of newspapers out of the mess and took a slow, deliberate step back to the couch. Lily squinted in the half-light as she took the object in her hooves and began unwrapping it. "What is this?" "I made that for you at Skylight's glass-blowing class." She trotted into the kitchen and pulled open a drawer. "It's a vase?" Lily looked up and watched Goldfish drop a box of matches on the end table, next to a tall candle painted with the solar crest. "Are you ready?" Goldfish asked. She slid the box open and fished out a single match. Lily smiled. "Yeah, it's time." Goldfish flicked the match against its box and held the tiny flame against the wick. "Hoof in hoof we strike this light, to banish fear of endless night." Lily nodded with her eyes closed. "Sunlight's hope burns all night through, till dawn's light shines on me and you." When Lily opened her eyes, the cottage was filled with a warm light, brighter than a single candle could possibly illumine. White daisies and lilies glittered at the farthest fringes, while darker flowers sank into the background, leaving only their fragrance. The smile on Goldfish was bright enough that Lily wasn't sure the candle was necessary at all. "Go on, take a look." Lily blinked. "Hmm?" Goldfish was biting her lip as she gestured toward the vase. Lily lifted it in her hooves and examined it under the candlelight. It was blown glass, and the bottom half was bulged out like a fishbowl, and colored blue, except for the golden swirl that resembled a fish. Every square inch of glass was full of tiny bubbles that sparkled with their own flame. Lily took a deep breath and hugged it to her chest. "It's beautiful." "Now," Goldfish said, bopping Lily on the nose, "I'm going to run across town and pack. I can carry everything in one trip, and then we'll go to the summer sun celebration together. In the morning we'll take a nap, and then we can have Rose, Daisy, and Derpy over to play some games. I know you've been eager to try out that 5 to 6 player expansion for hearth-warming homesteaders, and I think it'll be nice to have game night somewhere else for a change." Lily giggled. "That sounds like a good plan. But how will we ever have truly epic nachos without Derpy moving her entire kitchen in here?" Goldfish snorted. "Maybe Daisy can try out another one of her Daisy recipes, as long as it isn't Daisy chili, or anything chili related." "True," Goldfish said with a grimace. "But why don't we worry about that tomorrow?" "Yeah," Lily said. "You go get your stuff. I'll wait here." "You better. Don't you move from that spot," Goldfish said, wagging a hoof at Lily. "I'll be back in a few minutes." Goldfish darted to the door and flung it open, then turned around and spent several seconds gazing at the home's interior. Her eyes touched on every flower before she said, "This is exactly what I imagine the inside of your heart looks like." She made contact with Lily and smiled. "Perfect." She backed out and closed the door without looking away. Lily listened to the sound of galloping hoofsteps and wild laughter fade into the darkness. She shifted on the couch, leaning back against the cushion and holding the vase up to her line of vision. A lily. It was the perfect size for a single lily. But there were no lilies within Hoof's reach, and she promised not to move. It could wait. Lily set the vase on the table next to the summer sun candle. She could wait too. Lily woke with a start. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. Nothing wrong with a little nap, and Goldfish wasn't back yet. Lily frowned. Her home felt different. Colder. Darker. She turned to look at the end table. The summer sun candle had burned out. Nothing was left but a shallow puddle of wax. A gentle prod from her hoof confirmed what she had suspected. The wax was cold and hard. No hint of dawn was showing through the kitchen window in the east. It must have been a defective candle. She had reached the end. Turning around, Lily studied the swath she had cut through the meadow. A straight, unerring line, stretching all the way to the cottage and back, of grass and shrubs devoid of flowers. Compared to the rest of the field, it looked barren. It wasn't dead, but it wasn't really living either. Just sort of existed, while the untouched remainder was arrayed in splendor, like a tiny funeral in the middle of a party. Lily dropped the last flower into one of the baskets across her back, then bounced up and down a few times to feel the weight of them. It should be enough to last all day. She turned back around and looked at the giant thicket of rue growing along the river in the shade of the meadow's lone oak tree. The tiny yellow blossoms looked so warm, and the almost velvety white fuzz on the blue-green leaves made it look soft and inviting. Lily reached out to Hoof and fluffed the branches a bit to make sure they concealed the makeshift tent and bedroll beneath. The road lingered a dozen paces away, meandering by her cottage and her meadow. Lily struck off through the grass and headed toward town. She kept her eyes on the hard-packed dirt road beneath her hooves as she passed the darkened cottage and tried to ignore the tightness in her chest. She had waited and cried. At some point she had realized that the sun just wasn't going to rise. By the time she got to town, the stampede was over. There was no panic in the streets. Every pony had already barricaded themselves indoors or resigned themselves to going about their business in the light of the empty moon, helping the injured or cleaning up the summer sun decorations that had been torn down and trampled. Hours of wandering around Ponyville had been as unproductive as she'd known they would be. The truth had settled in her bones before she saw the collapsed balcony, the charred city hall, or the occasional pony wailing in the streets. Lily had lied to herself, trying to delay the inevitable. Just like she had lied to herself about goldfish in the first place. She'd been so afraid, so scared to let someone in. She kept telling herself that she could handle it, that she would be okay, that she would be happy, that she could make goldfish happy. She pretended not to be afraid, but she did it. She took the risk, and goldfish was happy. She was so dizzyingly happy. But for how long? It wasn't so much that goldfish might have turned her down. It had been a possibility, but what if goldfish had said yes, and then Lily was unable to make her happy? Instead of a winding garden path surrounded by flowers, it would be a road that ended in tears. Part of her had been secretly hoping that goldfish would say no, or that something would happen. Some disaster that would crop up and prevent them from being together. Something to save Lily from the risk of failure. Well, a disaster had happened. It was a stampede. Mindless, blameless, nothing but terror and momentum, and the candle or torch that must have been knocked over in confusion. The event had nothing to do with Lily's fleeting wish made in a moment of panic, but the memory of that desire clung firmly to the underside of her brain like an insect, burrowing its way into every thought and every conversation, waiting for the quiet moments to whisper, "You got your wish." Lily winced, then turned and retched in the grass by the side of the road. When Lily opened her eyes, she saw a discarded lily, shriveled and turning brown, lying among the weeds. Yesterday, that flower had made a pony happy. Lily spat one last time, then wiped her mouth with a fetlock and turned back to the road. That flower would look the same if it had been left in the field. It would have turned brown, shriveled, and fallen to the ground as all flowers do, abandoned as all lilies are when they've provided their day's worth of happiness. Only, without Lily, no pony would have seen it. Some pony's life would be a bit duller and a bit sadder without that spark, that symbol of renewal. And where yesterday's happiness lay crushed in the gutters or mixed in with discarded food wrappers in the park's trash cans, today's happiness would take their place, and again tomorrow. It reminded Lily of one thing: hope.